I remember in like 2017, I held some Bitcoin. I got the Bitcoin Cash fork. I wasn't really like tuned in, like a lot of people, into the technicals and the block size war back then. I was more of like a degenerate like trader back then with not a. But I guess what I would say is kind of just be patient, listen. It's an ego thing. You might not be right. In order for there to be big changes, you need to get consensus, right? You need a lot of people to see it your way. A lot of people complain today, oh, we should be doing this, we should be doing that, and now it's Michael Saylor's fault, or it's government's fault, or it's this person. If you have a good enough idea that's going to help add value to Bitcoin, I mean, go ahead, try to fork it off, see what happens, right? Like, go for it. I mean, you'll probably end up the same way as the tens of other copycats, Bitcoin Cash, BSV, Bitcoin Diamond, Bitcoin whatever, right? There was like a million other things, but no one's stopping you. It's open source, protocol. Get enough people to agree with you. I know it's easier said than done, right? Because like the Bitcoin network now has an incredible network effect. So even if you do have a good idea, to get something like implemented might not happen, but this is the way it's written. It's code, and maybe that's part of what will be seen as a weakness of some. But in order for this experiment to last hundreds and thousands of years, we can't have people constantly changing things and tinkering with things. And I know that upsets a lot of people, but just do better. Convince people why things should be changed. Convince why your soft fork should be implemented, right? And in the end, it's really like a marketing campaign. Can you market your idea better? And a lot of the really smart people who know things on a very technical level, that's not their skill set. Instead, they get like confrontational with others, and kind of it could come off as like an I know better than you kind of tone. So you may have a good idea, but you need to know how to like work a room. Someone who does organic marketing for a living, gets paid to do that, does it for companies, my own personal brand. The social layer of Bitcoin is as important as everything else, because without people advocating for Bitcoin, maybe over time it would just move at a much slower pace. So my point is, you have a good idea, great, share it, let everyone know why it's a good idea, and be better at communicating it to other people.
Some people get it. This is my opinion of it, obviously, but they look at like, oh, BlackRock's going to come in and corrupt it. And that's why I brought up the block size wars, because the block size wars, again, go read the book for anyone who hasn't. A big entity can't just come in and just change the code. Neil just touched on it perfectly. You have to get consensus. You have to work the room. And that's, I think, where you have these big entities that in theory could change things. They could work the room. So they can't just come in and just change everything and steal your Bitcoin. But, is there any concern to you about that, of people coming in like a BlackRock, or whether it's Saylor or whoever it is, an Elon Musk, someone that has a lot of sway, a lot of, psychological, sales ability, and could sway large amounts of people. And again, the answer, maybe it's just, well, hey, we could fork it off. And like Andreas said, years ago, it's like, oh, good luck with your BlackRock coin. Good luck with your NSA coin. Like, here we go again. Is that, if that happened where they sway a majority of people to be like, hey, this is the right Bitcoin, do the Bitcoiner ethos people just fork it off again? Like, how does that play out in your mind?
Well, it just reinforces why having self-custody of your Bitcoin is so important. Because if there is some like fork in the future, and you are concerned, at least if you're custodying it, you now have both.
Yeah.
And you get to make a decision. You could hold one, you could sell one for the other. Historically, selling whatever altcoin is like the new fork, selling it then and there or shortly after has allowed you to accumulate even more Bitcoin. So I know there's some Bitcoiners who would say, yeah, fork it. It's like it's free money for us. Sure, do your own like thing. So a lot of people look at it as like this threat, and others are like, oh, it's an opportunity to just stack more Bitcoin because your thing's not going to work. But yeah, I mean, there's concerns. It doesn't keep me like up at night. Bitcoin has, it's still young, but it's in 16 years today, but it always finds a way. And I think the incentives are aligned for it to continue finding the right way and make, having the most optimal outcomes. But look, not everyone may agree that the optimal outcome to one might not be to other, because you've asked Roger Ver, he'd say, oh, this wasn't the optimal outcome, right? He'd still be, he still screams about it today. But again, that goes back to the ego and humility and, maybe admitting you're wrong.
So everyone, most people in the world have heard of it probably at this point. Do you start questioning people like, hey, how have you not adopted this yet? Because I do. And I'll just say that up front. Like, I kind of question people at this point, and I'm a little leery. I mean, it sounds funny at first, but like, I'm a little leery of like, and again, we go back to this ego humility thing. Like, I kind of like give it like like type of thing. And it might be bad to me and people might, hate me for that. But to me, it's this ego humility check. It's not an IQ thing. It's not like, oh, Neil's smarter than me or something like that. Brandon's smarter than me. It's this ego humility thing. Have you given that any thought at all at this point? Maybe 8 years ago, 5 years ago, not a thing, I don't think. But at this point, I'm leaning more that way every day.
Yeah, over the years, it's been a journey where, when I first kind of had my big orange pilling like moments, and I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. And it's like, I got to tell all my friends, and none of them give a shit. And then I want to tell my family, and they're like, whatever you want to do, Neil, that's fine. Do your thing. Basically the reason I'm kind of talking to you today is because I had a lot of rejection from like peer groups who didn't want to talk about it. So I went to places where people wanted to like talk about Bitcoin. I never like wanted to work in the Bitcoin space. I never planned on having a merch and apparel store. I never planned on promoting conferences or going on podcasts. I just thought this was like super interesting. I wanted to talk to people. So I went on like Bitcoin Twitter, and then there was Bitcoin Clubhouse, and then there were all these other things, and then there were meetups, and I just wanted to talk about Bitcoin with people. So I kind of have shifted over the years from, and I think I'm going to get to your question and answer it at some point, but I've gone from wanting to try to convince people to not caring about convincing them, because I have so many people now that come to me that want to learn about Bitcoin. So I think it's better that my energy is focused on them. So I guess the original question is, do I think less of people? I guess in some way. I might question other things that they come to me with. It's a difficult situation, because if I like, God forbid, needed brain surgery or something, and there was a brain surgeon and he was recommended as one of the top in the world, but he's like, oh, this Bitcoin thing's stupid, would that stop me from like having him do this? I don't know. But maybe in certain things in life, I might be like, oh, if this person is so close-minded, maybe I would stay away. But again, Michael Saylor in 2013 said, something to the effect of, Bitcoin, the government, it's going to go the same way as like online gambling. I think implying that like the governments would like clamp down on it. And if you would have like said, oh, this guy's an idiot, like clearly he's not an idiot, right? He was just focused on other things at the time. So I think Bitcoiners need to be careful about jumping on certain people. I'm okay with going after critics of Bitcoin who have large platforms, but just like your average person, I don't really like look at them any differently for not understanding Bitcoin. I just know like we all broke out of that matrix at some point. We were all them at some point. So I can't like think less of them because of that.
Eric Trump, that, obviously he was waxing poetic about Bitcoin just in the last, what was that? I guess 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. It was fairly recently over in the Middle East. And he surprised me. I'll say that. He really surprised me at his level of understanding of Bitcoin and what it means. Talked very well. I mean, he seemed like a Bitcoiner. I know his father has some ways to go, it seems, getting there. We just started the journey. We're all on the journey. And Eric seems to get it the most in that family so far. And he was, very poetic with how he was speaking about it. So I'd love your thoughts on that. And then leading up all the way to, I think it was yesterday, you were saying that Saylor was meeting with them. So I would love your thoughts on what this could potentially mean, and just in general, I think, where the Trump family might be at, but how they're aligning themselves and what this might mean for an SBR or what have you down the road here.
If you want the answer to that question right there and you like that spicy clip, check it out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. But if you want the full interview in its entirety, all the spicy clips put together, and you're not going to want to miss it, believe me, then check that out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. Do it.